Hi there, my name is Jacob and I'm a member of the team here from ubisend, and as you can tell from the array of dying houseplants in the background over there, I am currently working remotely, which brings us nicely onto the topic of this video, which is supporting remote workers with easily available tech. And now the purpose for this video is that remote workers face a lot of different challenges to those normally in the office, and a lot of the time you need to nip them in the bud quickly, and can be quite difficult to find ways to do so due to the dispersed nature of remote working. I would also like to throw in a quick little disclaimer at the start of this video, which is this video is going to cover the three, maybe four or so biggest problems that remote workers face and how you can solve them with chatbots. If you're more interested in the kind of video, say, about leadership styles and kind of motivating the team, well, we'll probably touch on motivation a little bit throughout the video. This won't be for you. However, if you are a member of HR or a line manager that's really looking for different ways to kind of make the work experience better for your employees and just kind of improve the remote working experience for everyone involved, then stay tuned because this video is going to tackle the biggest problems and give you quick, easy solutions. So the first problem that I want to talk about today is that remote workers have a hard time getting answers to their questions. So this is kind of a twofold problem where either they'll be waiting for a long time for a response because they can't simply just ask a colleague next to them. They instead have to send an email or a message on Slack and wait for a response. But also as well, this means they're bothering somebody else who then has to either open up their emails or maybe like close down a window, stop what they're doing, manually type out a response or even find the answer themselves. So it doesn't just impact their productivity, but it also impacts the productivity of their team or their HR department. So if we can remove that issue, we're kind of helping to improve the productivity as the business as a whole, as well as also kind of helping that remote worker kind of feel a little bit more involved in the company. They're a bit more up to date with how things work, and they're just kind of like not having to deal with the frustration of like, okay, I know I need this. I now just have to wait an extra half an hour for somebody to get back to me when normally it would just take a couple seconds. So we're going to talk about how you can solve that. So the first way that I want to talk about this is by using a chatbot. So when you use a chatbot to solve these problems, you essentially just basically imagine you're typing a response to a chatbot. Let's pick a quick and easy question here, like say something along the lines of, I'm looking for the employee handbook. All you have to do is just ask the chatbot that, and then the chatbot's going to be able to just search through its archives, use a bit of natural language processing to understand what you're asking, ping back the answer. And of course, obviously, you don't need to be asking the same question in the exact same way. You can rephrase the question so that the chatbot will always be able to understand. So it's not, say, restrictive to employees that have to always ask the special words. It's a very natural process, really good and easy, kind of a lot of quick wins for these kind of frequently asked questions, which just require a simple answer. But of course, that's not the only kind of questions that employees and remote workers specifically are going to be asking. They'll also be interested in things such as, say, let's choose a more complex process, a question which often leads to a process which takes a little bit more time and can take a little bit of guidance, and they'll need to be kind of walked through. So imagine if you say like an employee is trying to register their sickness, and then so obviously normally in the office you can just kind of talk to a manager and they'll be able to talk you through the process, or maybe not with sickness because obviously you won't be in, but with a lot of similar processes such as expense claims. But if you're continuing using the sickness as an example, for a remote worker, they can just simply talk to the chatbot, and the chatbot's going to be able to walk them through the process and guide them through exactly all the steps that they need, making sure that they fill out all the necessary information without having to wait on a reply, not sure if their line manager's seen it, having to maybe even ring up HR or ring up a manager. All of that's completely removed when you use a chatbot, and it's perfect for remote employees because obviously remote employees might be working longer hours, slightly different hours, maybe in a different time zone, or your HR department might not be there to be able to pick up the phone and answer an email immediately. A chatbot, it never sleeps, it's there 24/7, so you'll be able to work with it and kind of keep everything going nicely. Okay, so the second problem that remote staff face is kind of more of a problem that I'd say a business faces as a whole, but it definitely applies to remote staff. And this is onboarding employees into the remote working process. So whether this is, say, you've got a new employee who's going to be working remotely permanently, or maybe 3-4 days a week, or you've got a long-standing employee who's now just recently starting to work remotely. Onboarding them into this process can be quite time-consuming for either the manager or the HR department. It takes up a lot of time, and for a lot of employees as well, they sometimes, I know from reading a few forums and kind of asking a few polls, they often feel a little bit like they've just kind of been told to work from home and just kind of let go. And obviously as well, there's also health and safety things that you need to tick off and everything. So you, again, can solve this problem easily with a chatbot. We've actually got a video on using a chatbot to onboard remote workers. I'll put the link for that down in the description. During that video, we just basically talk through how we build the chatbot. It's kind of quite an in-depth and thorough video explaining the full process, really nice and simple to use, and it's good to see the kind of thoughts behind doing it. But for the purpose of this video, I'll just kind of give a quick little demonstration, a little example here of how how you could use a chatbot to help onboard a remote employee, where all the chatbot would do is just kind of clarify that they've got all the necessary information, make sure that, say, the HR department and everybody is aware of the fact that they're going to be working from home, they've kind of completed all they've got the necessary equipment, and their health and safety is all going to be ticked off. So, they're not going to be, say, working on their bed for the next 6 months or anything like that. So, they'll have a nice supportive chair and whatnot. But yeah, so these kind of like small processes that take up from time from HR, and they kind of really impact the remote workers' time at work. It's great to just kind of to nip these in the bud with a chatbot. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to talk about is one that I actually talked about a little bit towards the start of the video, but this is this kind of help going through processes. And what I mean by this is, again, obviously they don't have someone there to guide them. They can't nip downstairs to HR and find out exactly what the expense claims is. And the big problem that we've seen is, say, remote workers will sometimes have slightly different processes to those in the office, which is obviously natural, that there will always be different processes. But for a lot of them, you want them to be as similar as you possibly can. You don't want to have to say, because it kind of gets a bit convoluted if you say you've got a remote staff that go through X, Y, and Z, and then your on-site staff just doing X and Z, or maybe just X, Y, Z, and then some more because they're on site, whereas remote workers are kind of getting a little bit easier in terms of how they do things. You want them to kind of be up to date. So if they ever do work in the office, nothing's changed, they don't do anything incorrectly. And also as well, it helps with that kind of keeping involved in the company culture. As long as every employee, no matter where they're working, is following the same processes, there's never going to be any feelings of unfairness or kind of feelings of special treatment, and there's not going to be any confusion. So again, you can solve this by using a chatbot's conversation builder. As long as you've got a flexible conversation builder, like the one on my screen is ubisend for the example, you'll be going to be able to match your internal processes exactly. So this means when you do have remote staff and you're building a chatbot that can kind of help support them, whether it's guiding them through expenses or, say, like sickness, or maybe even something a lot more complex, such as ordering new equipment, then you're going to be able to replicate the exact process that you would have in the office. A lot of offices will say have like kind of almost a checklist and a form for people to fill out. You can basically input that into the chatbot, make it a nice conversational medium, and completely replicate it. Again, completely cutting out the issue that you might have some employees that are remote dealing with different processes to those in the office, kind of creating this kind of unfairness and disparity across the business. Okay, so and the final issue that I want to talk to you about today is a little bit more of a weird one. It's a little bit more of a, say, difficult to explain, actually, to be honest with you, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And that's the fact that remote workers don't get to share their kind of issues or the pains that they go through as easily as they do in the office. And this one, actually, as I say it, is a bit more kind of business focused here, but the business can't pick up on these pains as easily. Obviously, say if everyone's in the office, naturally we'll just talk and communicate more, whether they're filling up a cup of coffee, share a couple of gripes and bugs they've had and issues they've had that day. This all kind of gets passed around. It's quite easy for HR managers to pick up on these issues and share it. When everyone's working from home, it's obviously you're just talking to these four walls or on a video call, so it's a lot less likely that you're going to be sharing these issues. They're kind of going to go unnoticed, and over time they're really going to start to grind staff down, increase staff turnover, and really kind of like just basically cause burnout. So what you need to do is you need to be able to kind of have a way to tackle these for remote workers without being a bit too in their face, constantly asking if they're okay, making people feel like they're micromanaged. The way that you can do that is by using a chatbot's dashboard. So as long as you've kind of got a comprehensive and solid dashboard, like the one that you're seeing on my screen here, you'll be able to have a huge range of data of your chatbot's usage, how the employees are talking to the chatbot, and most importantly, the types of things they're asking it. So as you can see on my screen here, we've got the top FAQs triggered. Now these are basically the top questions that people have asked the chatbot. Obviously, I'm just kind of playing around in the little mock-up demo section here, so it's not a huge amount of data, but as you can already see, I mean, I know a lot of HR professionals are going to be able to see this and say, oh man, I can learn so much from this data, because especially this one at the bottom, thankfully 0 messages sent, but I'm being bullied / harassed, what should I do? This is a huge warning message. If this starts going up quite a lot, obviously this is something that you definitely want to be keeping an eye on. But as well, you've also got the kind of, say, more simple kind of company process style things, such as how do I submit an expense? How do I report sickness? What are my benefits? You can use these and say, well, maybe do we want to invest a little bit more time into, say, onboarding employees, making sure they're up to date with how the company works and company culture. Or as well, a nice one here is, can I have a pay rise? This is quite a nice little FAQ to keep an eye on, because it shows, okay, are employees happy with how much they're getting paid? And obviously these kind of questions, they lead to quite a, there's almost a rabbit hole of information that you can start reading into, of like, okay, so why are so many employees asking about pay? Are they feeling a bit unhappy, feeling a bit undervalued, or have they maybe been really achieving recently and working hard and they need a bit more reward? So, with this kind of, even just this really small data here and just kind of a little bit looking, you can already really start to understand how your remote staff are feeling towards the business, feeling themselves, without kind of having to, send out 100 surveys and 100 flyers, which often have poor completion rates and quite a high elements of bias. As well, one thing that I'm also going to touch on here is the fact that obviously what you can see at the moment, these are kind of the default metrics that comes with ubisend. We've got quite a customizable dashboard, so obviously you can drag them around depending what matters to you, make it kind of look pretty. But also as well, you can add, we've got a huge range of default inbuilt metrics, so helpful FAQs, not helpful FAQs. That's quite good for understanding if your chatbot's working and understanding if your employees are happy with it. But most importantly, I want to talk about the custom FAQs, which are custom metrics, sorry, which are at the bottom here. So we've got employees that asked about pay reviews, which I've already touched on, and how many employees asked about the benefits scheme. These are ones that we've made ourselves, really simple to make. You literally just kind of create a metric and then just assign it to a chatbot conversation, and it will automatically tally it up. You don't need to be techie at all, really nice and simple. But especially this how many employees asked about the benefit scheme. This is great for HR departments because they can add this into their dashboard and then they can just kind of keep an eye on it and see how many employees are actually speaking about the benefits. Okay, are the initiatives we've put in place made people happy with the benefit scheme? You might want to add a few more kind of metrics of say how many employees that asked about the benefit scheme kind of went on to actually view the different benefits or seemed happy. Was there kind of positive sentiment involved in these conversations? So yeah, so it's a really great way for you to kind of like slowly like this kind of, basically you have this passive data gathering that allows you to draw insights about your workforce without ever feeling like you're kind of bombarding them with questions. And obviously as well, you can then start to tackle these pains that you see arising or kind of put in new HR initiatives. And it really is quite an actionable, nice way to have kind of all this wealth of information, which HR departments a lot of the time struggle to have. It's not like, say, like if you work in marketing, you can hop onto Google Analytics and you've got all this information about your customer base. And chatbots are kind of trying to do the same for employees, giving HR a lot more kind of information about how they work and everything along those lines and what keeps them happy. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that video. Hopefully I didn't waffle on or speak too much. Just before you do go, I've got a few things just to mention as well. So the video itself kind of covered the four main pains of remote workers. So the fact that they often can't get instant access to information, the fact that they might have, say, like onboarding issues and kind of need help guided through processes, and also as well slightly touched on the fact that they need more out of hours support, but obviously that kind of naturally solved by a chatbot, but it's 24/7 everything. And as well also touching upon the fact that they have different pains to those in the office and it can be hard to keep track of them. So as that can be solved with a chatbot, I also just kind of wanted to mention that if you ever do have any questions about how the technology works, if you might have, say, a bit of a weird use case that you want to run past us, we're kind of experts in the field, so just drop a question down in the comments. We reply to everyone. Of course, as well, slap a subscribe onto the channel. We release high quality content about HR and chatbots all the time, so you definitely don't want to be missing any of that. And if you do want to see, say, a little bit more of the ubisend platform, I'll also throw a link down for a demo in there. Just get in touch. It's a nice kind of like relaxed, casual demo. We just talk to you about what your use case is and then just show you what the platform can do and then kind of gives you a bit of time to think about it. No pressure, no anything. Okay, thank you.